Senku, Dr. Stone. Senku Ishigami is a scientific genius who is able to rebuild modern civilization from zero. If you believe knowledge is strength, then Senku is Goku. He has an unholy amount of scientific knowledge, and even if there is a gap in that knowledge, he can fill in the gaps with his own reasoning. And thanks to his knowledge and reasoning, he can create just about anything. Need communication? He'll build a cell phone from raw materials. Need medicine? He'll make some antibiotics. Need electricity? He'll create it using copper and zinc. Senku is also a brilliant teacher. He can break down complex science into simple steps that not only the characters, but even us viewers can easily understand. This is an important point because not all scientific geniuses are created equally. For example, Dr. Genius from One Punch Man or Mayuri from Steins Gate are the kind of scientific geniuses who get lost in their own complex theories and fail to communicate them effectively. That's right. Even though Senku's brain works like a supercomputer, he can work with other people. He's pretty down to earth. As for his most impressive feats, I'd say that sequence of him counting seconds with a consistent pace for 3,700 years straight is by far one of the hardest feats in anime history. The level of mental resilience is downright incomprehensible. Of course, he also took humanity from sticks and stones back to rockets and the internet, and then ultimately, even the time machine. Lelouch, Code Geass. Lelouch v Britannia represents strategic genius at its most theatrical and grand scale. Even before obtaining his Geass, Lelouch was well known for his tactical genius. He could defeat nobility and military officers in chess while being a student. And more importantly, his mind was sharp enough to keep himself and Nunnally hidden from Britannia for years. With just a small group of rebels, he repeatedly outdid Britannia's superior forces. Yep, he transformed a terrorist group into a legitimate army that went on to challenge the world's strongest empire. And then during the Zero Requiem, he made the entire world hate him on purpose and then leveraged that hatred as a tool for world peace. He predicted and manipulated every major faction on Earth into exactly the positions he needed them in. This is what I mean when I say that Lelouch represents strategic genius at its most theatrical and grand scale. Another example is how even when things went wrong during the Special Administrative Zone massacre, he had the mental capacity to turn that tragedy into a victory by putting the blame on Euphemia and reinforcing himself as the symbol of rebellion against the Empire. The idea of Zero itself was also brilliant, to be honest. He created a persona that became a symbol of hope for the oppressed. It's crazy to think about how he started off with just a small group of rebels, and not only managed to win against the Holy Britannian Empire, he also succeeded in creating a new, better world for his sister and everyone. Sure, Geass played its part in all of this, but let's not forget that Geass manifests uniquely in everyone's mind. You get the power that best suits your personality and goals. Lelouch's Geass gives him the power of absolute obedience, because he sees life as a chessboard. He's the king, and anyone he uses his Geass on is just another pawn in his game. Johan Liebert, Monster. Johan Liebert represents the darkest form of genius in anime. You see, his intelligence isn't about making stuff or winning battles of strategy. It's about understanding the human mind so deeply that he can break it. To give you just a few examples, his feats include convicting an entire orphanage of children to community mass suicide. And he did that without even being there. Guys, Johan Liebert manipulated an entire group of orphans into committing suicide by simply provoking them and their instructors into causing chaos. All of them died by either killing each other or burning alive. Unlike Light, who simply wanted to become the god of the New World, Johan was working towards the end of human society itself. He wanted to become the last human alive at the end of the world. Using his cold, calculative genius, he murdered his foster parents, the Lieberts, in cold blood and then proceeded to manipulate Anna into shooting him. He is a manipulative psychopath who treats manipulation like an art. The fact that he manipulated his own sister into shooting him in the head goes to show how far he has gone to the deep end. Now, Johan is also a master of disguises. He was shown to live entire lives as different people. This must have required an extreme form of psychological intelligence because he adapts personality so perfectly that no one questions who he is. This is the thing about Johan. He understands human nature too well. Aizen, Bleach. Sosuke Aizen might be the most brilliant manipulator in anime history, and he is so good at it that he was able to orchestrate over a century of events exactly as he planned. For over 100 years, he maintained a perfect facade as a gentle, scholarly captain of the 13 court guard squads. Not a single person in Soul Society suspected his true nature. One of his greatest feats was manipulating the entire timeline of Soul Society's recent history. He was the one behind the holification incident that forced Urahara and the Vizards into exile. He engineered Rukia Kuchiki's execution to extract the Hogyoku. He even claimed to have secretly planned Ichigo Kurosaki's entire life story. It's as they say, every major event, every minor event, even some random nonsense, it's all a part of Aizen's plan. He is a scientist, tactician, strategist, and manipulator, all in one. And he is better than your best guy at all of them. I mean, let's talk about his understanding of psychology. He knows exactly how to push people's buttons, how to exploit their weaknesses, and how to make them dance to his tune without realizing they're being manipulated. He turned Momo's admiration into a weapon, used Toshiro's protective instincts against him, and even predicted and accounted for Gin Ichimaru's eventual betrayal years before it happened. If we're talking about his scientific genius, he created his own version of the Hogyoku before Urahara, mastered the process of holification, and developed ways to create and modify Arrancar. He even created specialized Arrancar designed to counter specific threats, like engineering Wonderwise specifically to nullify head Captain Yamamoto's powers. Even his Zanpakuto, Kyoka Suigetsu, reflects his nature as a manipulator. Its perfect hypnosis ability doesn't just create illusions, it controls all 5 senses so completely that even knowing you're under its effect doesn't help you break free. He once made an entire army fight empty air while he walked away casually. Even Yuhabak, of all people, was caught off guard by his Kyoka Suigetsu. There's always layers upon layers when it comes to his plans. Every scheme has backup schemes, every plot has hidden meanings, and even apparent defeats often turn out to be part of his larger strategy. The only person Aizen ever acknowledged as intellectually superior was Kisuke Urahara, and even then, Aizen often stayed several steps ahead. He understood secrets about the Soul King, the true nature of the world, and even the incoming Quincy threat before anyone saw them coming. Heck, even you watching this video, it's all a part of Aizen's brilliant plan. Light Yagami, Death Note. Light Yagami is by far the most prominent calculating genius in the anime medium. Keep in mind that even before he got the Death Note, this kid solved complex criminal cases while still being the top student at his high school. Of course, it becomes a different story when he gets the Death Note. I mean, imagine being so brilliant that you join the task force that is supposed to be hunting you down, all the while working alongside the world's greatest detective. Now, L is also a genius of the same level as Light. In fact, many fans argue that L's overall intelligence surpasses Light's intelligence. So why are we talking about Light in this video and not L? That's because we're only doing one genius character per anime in this video. If this video does well, we can do a part 2 where characters like L and Urahara are part of the list instead of Light and Aizen. Anyways, let's break down just how methodical Light really was. From day 1 with the Death Note, he established precise patterns for killing criminals. He spaced out deaths to different times of day, used different causes of death, and created false trails that made it impossible to pinpoint his location. There was clear intent behind every move, even if that move involved sending a competent young FBI lady to her death. Sure, his ego got the better of him and played right into L's hands, but then he temporarily gave up the Death Note, literally erased his own memories, and convinced everyone of his innocence, all while having a backup plan to regain his memories later. Then there's how he handled the Yotsuba investigation. He was literally helping to catch Kira while being Kira, and he used this position to direct suspicion away from himself. His manipulation skills are insane. He could read people instantly and tell them exactly what they needed to hear. He played the grieving son when L died, the dedicated police officer to his father, and the concerned citizen to the public. The way he eliminated L can be considered plot convenience, but let me point out that even if you think L is superior, Light's plan still deserves praise. He planned events so perfectly that he eliminated not just L, but also Rem. He turned L's suspicions about the 13-day rule against him and manipulated Rem's love for Misa. And just like that, he cleared his own name and got rid of 2 enemies in one move. In the end, his pride and ego were indeed his downfall. Just like how L's loss didn't diminish L's genius, Light's pathetic end also doesn't invalidate all of his intellectual feats. He was just a high schooler, and yet he triggered global skill changes and outsmarted the world's greatest detective. He also maintained perfect grades, a perfect social life, and a perfect public image. That is crazy. Shikamaru Naruto. Shikamaru Nara is probably the laziest genius in anime. Or at least, that's how he starts off. He'd rather watch clouds than finish an exam, and for what it's worth, the teachers actually thought that he was just a below-average student, until Asuma figured out what's up. The kid had an IQ over 200, but was too lazy to pick up his pencil during tests. During his fight with Tamari, he was able to come up with 200 different ways to win, and yet he still gave up because he didn't feel like winning. Forget about 2 steps or 3 steps. He is always 10 steps ahead. Now, as lazy as he used to be, he becomes a different beast the moment it becomes personal. I mean, you do not want a fully locked-in Shikamaru as your enemy. Just ask Hidan. Despite the fact that Hidan was immortal, he cooked him up and buried him deep into the earth. As Toby said, this level of intelligence was almost wasted because Shikamaru was a good guy. The thing about Shikamaru is that he can think 10 steps ahead and create hundreds of strategies in a matter of seconds. During the 4th Great Ninja War, Shikamaru served as chief strategist, and currently in Boruto, he is serving as the 8th Hokage. Ayanokoji, Classroom of the Elite. Kyokata Ayanokoji is a different kind of genius, one that thrives in invisibility. He scored exactly 50% on every entrance exam simply because he wanted to appear average. But when you think about it, isn't it harder to hit the same score across every subject than actually trying to ace the exam? His intelligence is terrifyingly practical. He sees through every human interaction as if it's a mathematical equation. He can spot lies in casual conversations, manipulate entire class dynamics, and even predict betrayals before they happen. This kind of thought process does make sense when you realize that he is a lone survivor of a lab facility where every child was made to go through all sorts of superhuman training. His father knew that he would be the greatest in the world. He has perfect memory, which allows him to remember every interaction and every detail, even from back when he was an infant. The way his intelligence works is more like artificial intelligence than just natural human genius. In fact, his plans aren't as crazy as they appear to be. It's just that he is the only one who has the indifference and will to carry them out. During the island survival exam, he was able to outsmart both Class 1A and Class 1C without either of them realizing it. He figured out their plans, he knew what they were going to do, and so he simply let them move around like pieces on a chessboard. Well, he thinks of people as nothing but tools after all. Yuichi Katagiri, Tomodachi Game. Yuichi Katagiri is a master of emotional intelligence. His IQ is also good. It's assumed to be around 140 to 150, but the real deal is his ability to understand the weakness of one's heart. Yes, when it comes to reading and manipulating people, he is a monster. Naturally, his genius shows best under pressure because that's when the human heart is the most vulnerable. And of course, in the Tomodachi Game, where friendships break and betrayal is common, Yuichi thrives. He is ruthless. He doesn't hesitate to threaten, manipulate, or destroy his opponents psychologically. It doesn't matter if it's one's weakness, fear, or insecurity. You bet he's definitely going to use it against them. He predicts what people will do. He understands why they'll do it. He sees through lies. He spots betrayal before it happens. He knows what his opponents will do before they decide to do it. The reason why he is so good at psychoanalysis is because he was somewhat raised by a master swindler named Taizen Shiba. That man taught him a lot of psychoanalytic techniques and mental tricks, like the special method. This history between him, his father figure, and adoptive mother is kind of complicated, especially because he killed them. But let's just say that while this father figure taught him the ugly side of humans, his adoptive mother taught him the good side of humans. He is someone who evolved into a master of emotional intelligence thanks to his troubled upbringing. As for his most chilling feat, it's revealed that the one who created the Tomodachi Game is he himself, Kaiji. Kaiji Ultimate Survivor. Out of all the genius characters on this list, Ito Kaiji is the closest to you and me. This is because there is nothing special about him. He's just a normal, cowardly guy struggling to survive in the modern-day capitalistic society. However, his ability to continuously survive and overcome extreme, near-death situations despite having every odd stacked against him is masterful. Both intelligence and survival come down to one's ability to adapt, and this is where Kaiji excels. Even when faced with rigged systems, even when faced with death itself, he can somehow, in some way, find a solution. He can see through deception. He sees patterns that others miss. Through pure observation and skills, he can find flaws in the most perfectly rigged game, and just like that, he wins. For example, he beat the rigged pachinko machine by slowly replacing maintenance tools with larger ones over time, all the while making sure that the ones in charge don't notice. It's kind of amusing how the more desperate the situation, the more intelligent he becomes. But watching him struggle is definitely not good for your heart. After all, his greatest strength, the source of his intelligence, is his resilience. It doesn't matter how much life drags him into the ground, he somehow always manages to find his way out. Meruem, Hunter x Hunter. Meruem is the most unique genius on this list because the nature of his intelligence is evolutionary. He is born as the ultimate biological weapon, and shortly after his birth, he realizes super genius levels of intellect. He evolves from pure predatory instinct to deep emotional intelligence and then also philosophical wisdom. He died 40 days after his birth, but those 40 days were full of intellectual growth. He far surpassed the level of ordinary humans, and despite his predatory nature, he began to question everything. He even acquired empathy and an understanding of human emotions thanks to Komugi. I'd say, considering how he was able to completely reconstruct his worldview after reaching a new understanding of things, you can say that he perfectly represents the simplest form of intelligence, the ability to adapt to change. Within days, he mastered chess, shogi, and go, and proceeded to defeat national champions one after the other. His mind evolved with each mastery. Now, even when he gained the ability to think of thousands of strategies at once, he was still never able to defeat Komugi. But then again, it was thanks to his losses against her that he himself began to show human emotions. At one point, he also tears off his own arm in apology for disrespecting her and the game. There is something intrinsically beautiful about a pure predatory beast with super intelligence eventually becoming capable of feeling human emotions thanks to the evolutionary nature of his intelligence. What makes him different from other characters on this list is how his intelligence takes him to the most basic thing about humans, their ability to feel empathy. He also showed great respect and admiration for Netero, and even called him the very pinnacle of human capabilities. I also love how while Gon became a complete monster like Meruem became human. How very poetic. Armin, Attack on Titan. Armin Arlert is a master of deduction. He never misses even the most minor detail. Of course, there are also other geniuses in Attack on Titan like Zeke, Erwin, or Hanji, but here we'll go with Armin because he is the most prominent genius character in the story. He can be a wimp, but his genius always comes through whenever they are in a crisis. Take the Battle of Trost, for example. While everyone was panicking about running out of gas, Armin came up with a plan to defeat the Titans guarding the supply depot. Or when he gave a convincing argument for Eren being a potential weapon against the Titans. He was also the one who proposed the bolder plan to seal the gates of the Trost district. He figured out that Annie was the female Titan, and later he also figured out that Reiner and Bertolt are her accomplices as the armored and colossal Titans. He was also the one who later proposed using Titan hardening to seal Wall Maria. During the return to Shiganshina, Armin realized that Reiner was hiding in the walls. Next, he sacrificed himself as bait and gave Eren the opening he needed to defeat the Colossal Titan. These are just the major moments. There are also plenty more where Armin's deduction skills saved the day. Naturally, this includes the plan to attack Liberio, the talk no jutsu with Zeke, and the ending sequence with Eren. Not to mention, the peace talks after Eren's death. The memes have been harsh to our boy, but when it comes to actual intelligence feats, he is a genius strategist and a master of deduction. Bulma, Dragon Ball. Bulma is a technological genius who can turn her talents to almost any field. At just 16, she built the Dragon Radar. There were already global Dragon Radars that could give you a rough idea of where a Dragon Ball might be. But Bulma's Dragon Radar was revolutionary because it could track exactly where a Dragon Ball was. She has also repeatedly shown us that she can understand alien technology almost effortlessly. She was able to fix the Scouter immediately. She learned the Saiyan language and the Namekian language. And she also improved the traditional Saiyan battle armor by creating variants that could withstand the physical stress of Super Saiyan transformations. You know, we don't really think about it that much because Dragon Ball is more about fights and aura moments, but Bulma is crazy. It's insane how she can just upgrade advanced alien technology without any manual or guide whatsoever. The thing about Bulma is how practical her genius is. Now, this doesn't mean that she's just some plot device that makes whatever the gang needs. She may be a technological genius, but she still needs knowledge and understanding, right? Well, back when she was a child, she was able to study various pieces of alien technology from Jocko's spaceship. This allowed her to easily understand Raditz's scouter and the nameless Namekian spaceship. She was familiar with Dr. Giroux's work and was able to restore Android 16. Plus, her own father is also a rich scientist, which means that she always had the physical and intellectual resources right at home. Of course, her greatest achievement is the time machine that she created in the future timeline. Aside from her, the only other person or group of people who created a time machine were from Universe 12. This made her a uniquely intelligent individual in the multiverse as a whole, because despite the vast amount of alien technology and life forms all over the multiverse, only Bulma and those guys in Universe 12 were able to produce the time machine. It gets crazier when you realize that she did it in a post-apocalyptic world with limited resources. Plus, the notes she left behind were so comprehensive that the present-day Bulma was able to replicate the same technology. Dr. Vegapunk, One Piece. Dr. Vegapunk is the Einstein, Newton, Tesla, and Oppenheimer of the One Piece world. His intellect is so vast and ever-increasing that he couldn't handle it with just one body, and so he ended up splitting himself into 6 other bodies just to manage all his research efficiently. Each of these bodies are satellites that can work on different projects simultaneously. Now, Vegapunk was always a genius, which is pretty clear if you go and visit his hometown like Frankie. But he then also ate the brain fruit, which allowed his brain to store an indefinite amount of information while also being able to recall anything he has ever learned. This devil fruit increased his mental efficiency and allowed him to make significant scientific breakthroughs in many different fields. It is said that his technological achievements are 500 years ahead of the current One Piece world. He created fully conscious robots, engineered living dragons in laboratories, and developed ways to replicate supernatural devil fruit powers through science. He explained that devil fruit powers are actually a manifestation of people's dreams, and also discovered how to transfer these devil fruit powers into inanimate objects. He developed green blood, a substance that can replicate paramecia-type abilities. He even succeeded in creating an artificial copy of Kaido's mythical Zoan devil fruit. The only other scientist who has come close to doing something remotely similar is Caesar. But we all know that Caesar's devil fruits are not even Walmart level when compared with Vegapunk's basically perfect artificial copies. Other than devil fruits, Vegapunk has contributed to the world in other ways as well. For example, he solved major world problems like crossing the Calm Belt by developing sea stone-lined ships. He created island-wide climate control, cloud plants, and Mother Flame. Mother Flame is an artificial, undying flame that was developed to be a source of unlimited, free energy for the entire world. But unfortunately, it was stolen and used to power an ancient weapon. Speaking of weapons, Vegapunk has advanced the world government's military capabilities by creating an army of powerful cyborgs, and then he also one-upped himself by creating the Seraphim. We're talking about artificial humans strong enough to replace the 7 Warlord system. Vegapunk's medical knowledge is crazy. He mastered organ cultivation, stem cell therapy, and advanced cybernetics. I mean, his understanding of human biology is so complete that he successfully removed significant portions of his own brain to optimize his thinking capacity. He cured Bonnie's incurable disease, and he may even end up somehow reviving Bartholomew Kuma. Finally, there's the part where he conducted forbidden research right under the world government's surveillance for over 20 years. He studied the Void Century and revealed all that he knew to the entire world. I'd say, if there's one man who changed the One Piece world to the same level as Goldie Roger, then that man is Dr. Vegapunk.